So what's going to happen is that we will get a Auditor General compliance. Once that is done, you will see who has done what and who has not complied, and then the president will accordance with the deadline that he set. Yes, but I must clarify also that the reason why we need to wait for the Auditor General and do a careful perusal is that people are appointed on different dates. There are people who were appointed like them, if you like, adequate time to do this, even after the appointed, and therefore do law fairness be subject to them. Whatever the case may be, in the next week we will look at it. There are those who have said in the past, in the recent past, when the president brought down the acts on those who had failed to comply, that they actually filed, they had receipts, but they had not captured them more or less. I'm sure that was an error. So you need to reconcile all of those.
There were 40 of them that the Fourth Estate published. Some of them responded.
Some of them responded that they had. Indeed, we demand from the Auditor General. But when you compare to the list that we found that there were omissions, I'm sure they were inadvertent omissions. So and then we'll be certain of who has done what, and then the action to be taken.
Because you wanted to.
Yeah, it can create. Like maybe let's be clear, near ahead of only Adam Bona. So what's the number of those who said?
There were so
let's there were by the time we are done, let's know the number. Because this
it is not a problem.
We are so Adam Bona. Ofosu, let's be very clear. You see, I supported President Mahama, no doubt. But it doesn't mean that once it's in everything he does, we continue support, even when it flies in the face of the constitution. I don't know why he keeps, they should do it, the number of, he doesn't have that power within, it can't come from President Mahama giving the constitution is clear, takes office. That is, and then the fire will start like that. I don't know who advises the
No, it's not that. Hold on, Martin.
I'm coming. Let me finish. It says that
I know that provision.
Before taking office,
but you know that there is an act.
That's why.
Martin. So let's get an answer now.
The law gives up to 6 months.
It's not law. That is not the law. This is the law. The constitution.
The law gives up to 6 months. For you, if after 6 months you have not done it, there are sanctions. You get removed from your position, and then you from occupying public office for 10 years. Exactly. So we need to go by the law.
So let's read that. So Martin,
I'll fetch it.
That this is the bigger issue.
But there's an act that regulates this.
When the act to the constitution, but 6 clause 1.
It is true. But there's an act. This it spells. Mama is keen,
and the act is not subservient.
No, back in. So it is a matter that you need to seek interpretation for. You understand me? If there's a law that regulates a certain conduct, you go by it. You understand me? In fact, I offered the law for you presently, but he knows that what I'm saying. No, he knows it. I'm not this. There is a law. It's called what? Public Office.
Yes, 550.
Absolutely.
So it's contrary to the constitution.
But
it's not very clear.
But that pronouncement has to be made by a court that between the one you need to comply with that. What is that?
Hierarchy of laws.
No. You are the lawyer. Tell me. So why was the need for the act to be passed?
Yes, so that's the mistake.
To explain.
Parliament makes mistakes all the time. There's a case number 3.
So as we speak, Martin, I'm asking because as we speak, is there any pronouncement from the Supreme Court that says that complying with the act is unlawful? No. I'm not a lawyer. You understand me? So we need to tarry in the way that we say this. But the point is that President Mahama is very interested in getting people to comply with the law. It is the reason why for the first time in our history, he has sanctioned persons who have failed to do this. That is an indication of a new direction. So I cited the law to show you that this is it is not just institution, it is regulated. Indeed, the sanctions for not doing those who are actually. So when he says that indeed it does not lie to apply sanctions. It's actually true. But he has taken administrative measures.
Essentially, Lawyer Matipebu is not wrong.
Yeah, it's not, but I'm also not wrong, actually. Yes.
And you are also,
I'm also not wrong. As I speak, if you show me a judicial pronouncement that says that complying with the act is unlawful, then what he's saying is justified.
Right.
But there's a reason why the act was passed. It was to what the position was. And if you look at the act, it gives you up to 6 months to do it, and then spells out specific sanctions for failing to do so. But President Mahama, on February 18th, which is barely 6 weeks or so into his presidency, laid down this marker. Only last Monday, he publicly spelled out sanctions for those who had failed to comply, and then gave indication that further refusal to comply will attract stiffer sanctions. I am only making the point that there are people who have been appointed a day after that deadline was given. So it will not be fair to hold them to the same deadline. That's the point I'm making. That's why.
Yes.
My
reference was with those who had not declared before Monday. In fact,
yes,
beyond
they are going to be sanctioned. Yes.
Beyond the sanctions of the 3-month salary, forfeiting their 3-month salary, there was the call that they should have been sacked. You know, not giving.
Well, of course, those
I'm sure you've heard that.
I've heard. Oh, of course. It is a valid criticism, Alfred, and I don't begrudge those who say that. But of course, we have to start from somewhere. In the past, people flouted this without any consequence at all, and nobody said anything. We lamented it, and nothing was done. But this time, President Mahama is setting a certain tone that we need to comply with it. There's a reason why the asset declaration law is there. Some have even criticized the whole asset declaration regime and said that this is inadequate, and that because of the lack of checks and balances, some scandal emerges. You are not even sure whether what has been declared is actually accurate, and that the person is even telling the truth. In fact, when you the forms, the Auditor General's legal departments, they go to ensure that you filled it properly before they seal it again.
Right.
Once that is sealed, it doesn't become public until you get some trouble. A court or perhaps judge request that they produce it. That to check. Some have argued that that is even inadequate, and that there have to be ways of monitoring compliance with this, and to see whether people are actually telling the truth, is to overstate their assets with the acquiring more in future. Some have criticized it. We can have about it, but the position of the law is clear, set within the context of what the president is trying to. We all agree here that no president under the Fourth Republic has taken any against people who violate this law. Indeed, there are Supreme Court justices, some of whom who were appointed to become chief justices, who actually had not complied with this, and it became an issue. But there was no sanction.
So because the right came out and gave them opportunity to go and they suffered public shame.
Well, but anyway, so in the same vein, at least in the same vein, those who criticize President Mahama for deducting up to 4 months' salary of those who failed to comply with this. Exactly. Is it that punishment is stiffer? That punishment is stiffer than what the Supreme Court justice understand. Public shame is same as money that you need to fend for yourself. Oh no. Yes, Martin. Yes, but he still went ahead to occupy the position of Chief Justice. It did not cost him his role. Indeed, per the Constitution, it should have cost him that position.
You know what,
and the law set his position, but he didn't suffer that consequence. In President Mahama'S case, he says that you are going personally for failing to comply. But like I have said, when the Auditor General presents the updates sometime this week, or the president looks like, he will apply the sanctions that he has spelled out. The reason why some have called for an amendment is the way that this thing works. You know, there are public officials who actually don't know that they are board members. Some of them believe that it is only MPs and ministers and a category of public officials who are. So perhaps a way has to be found. It is done. But they are so it's not that they don't want to comply, they just don't know that they are affected. So maybe we have to improve the way that the law is applied.
The entire regime of the asset declaration in itself, as it stands in our constitution, is a problem.
Oh yes, it is. I agree that. I think it is nominal in my view. It is not biting enough. And the way it is, you can get away with a lot. because the supervision and control, apart from the fact that they guide you to Felix, nothing else is done to check of the claims that you have made in the asset declaration form.
Indeed.
When you leave office, nobody picks it to compare it to the assets as you are leaving office. So there's a huge problem, and we can perhaps take advantage of the constitutional amendment process to improve it. We can also perhaps enact additional legislation if there's some to address the matter. So, but you see, things also have to be done structurally and properly. There's every cause to lament the exceptionally balanced. We must also acknowledge over what we came to be. That is how societies are built. So take the asset declaration law, for instance. There's an act which was passed by Parliament. That act is law. As we speak, it has not been struck down. So everybody with the asset declaration regime is guided by this act. If you go to Section 1, subsection 4C, it makes it clear.
Quoting from Act 550.
Act 550. It says that it shall be done in any event. In any event, it shall be submitted not later than 6 months of the occurrence of any event specified in this subsection. And the earlier subsections speak about before you get in, after every 4 years, and at the end of a term. But it says that in any event, after 6 months of the occurrence of any of these, if you don't do it, you are subject to the sanctions that this same act spells out.
Right.
So you cannot overlook this and say that any wrong has been done. What President Mahama is doing actually is an enforcement before the legal deadline set in the law. So we cannot ask that we should disrespect the law. Again, when we come to the LI matter, I will explain. It is true that there's an LI that is problematic, but there are practical steps you need to take to. You need to factor in everything that will happen the moment you do it. So I will take the demand for things to be done a certain way. We cannot overlook laws, processes, and systems. If there are challenges with those, then we can call for the laws to be changed. But for as long as they remain, the president and his government are bound. It is the calling violate the constitution because they are unhappy that he has it. The president actually has not acted unlawfully. So the GBA is unhappy. They like a certain chief justice. So because of that, if the law says the president should act a certain way, he should not do so. You understand me? If we begin to, it becomes problematic. But that said, we understand the demand for better governance. Indeed, it is precisely the reason why President Mahama took up the challenge to become president again, to offer better governance. And so far, every fair, objective analyst would agree that he has done things much better than before. Can we do more? By all means, who even does better than President Mahama? Somebody should do better than President Mahama has done. And whoever do better, that is we demand better. We should also acknowledge in this instance. It's clearly the case. That's the point that I'm making. Yes.
And the concern that Achebe raises is the benchmarking.
No, we are not benchmarking. No.
What are we benchmarking against?
But Alfred, if something was bad, what is the opposite of that? What is done after that should be good. Is that not so? So if in the past people were not being sanctioned and today people are being sanctioned, is it not a clear improvement? Not so? No, you can say that the sanctions are not. Oh, excuse me, you can say fair comment, but you cannot dismiss the fact that we have moved from a position where there were no sanctions to a position where there were sanctions. In any event, stipulated that the sanctions that he applied last Monday in the beginning, and that any further delay will attract even. I think that this is fair, in my honest opinion. And I'm not dismissing their concern, but I'm only pointing out that there have been improvements which we need to acknowledge. Yes. Know that it has to be done according to law. You see, again, if I were to explain, if you allow me, you see, Alfred, there are two things that we need to consider. You see, it is not everything that you can write into law. Or it is not everything that constitutes a violation of law and that people comport themselves. So that is the essence of a code of conduct. And there are provisions that says that a minister should be respectful, should respect the city. If I come and sit here and I'm rude and arrogant, you can't throw me into jail. I will come under public condemnation, and it will give the bad press. It may even lead to our power. cannot legislate that. You understand me? It is not unlawful, but it is not acceptable. So this is what this code of conduct seeks to achieve. It is to any other action that is taken to put can codify into law public what do you call it? Code of public officers, code of conduct for public officers law or bill. You understand me? So the two as how we need to understand it. There are aspects of this that are already in law. Aspects of this, for example, conflict of interest is already spelled out in law, is it not? It is there. If you violate it, there are charges who come after you, as it has done in previous cases. If you receive a bribe, for instance, it will go to jail for that. So it is already there. But they are scattered. So when you are an appointee, especially for those who are coming into government for the there is a need for clarity to be brought can and cannot do as a public official. And that is what this code of conduct seeks to achieve. But as for those that constitutes offense against the law, they will come. I'm certain that the president is interested in ensuring that the previous government left the bill is continued. But again, you are the lawyer and I'm a member of parliament. I know that if the bill has passed before the last parliament rises, so you have to start
even going to
absolutely.
So that's why I say it's
and going and actually enacting a law, going through the process, you perhaps may have to do stakeholder consultation, have it drafted back and forth and all that. Parliamentary committees have to sit, amendments have to be taken and what have you. We cannot wait up until that time before members of this government are made aware of what they do. And I'm sure you've gone through the code. You see that there are many those things not taking anybody to court for, but they are not things that are acceptable. So, for example, if you are a member of my government, these are the things you need to do. Some government officials have a pension for traveling for free. I'm not going to tolerate it. Before you travel, submit a written notification to the Office of the Chief of Staff. He will verify, he will scrutinize it and see whether any relevance before you go. And indeed, I can tell you for free that there are people who have submitted such requests who have been declined because it was not deemed necessary. So it is, but this is an in-house activity. It's not something that we need to bore the public with. But it is in there to ensure that we take resources from flagrant abuse by persons who want to profit. It says that all government officials must bear in mind that we were elected into office to serve, and therefore we cannot lord it over anybody. So if you are rude to the public or you conduct yourself in a way that is not acceptable, there are sanctions. Indeed, I can tell you also for free. You remember the 3 RDC? In all honesty, he didn't break any law. You can even say that he was provoked because of the rude comments that was made about regarding the things that he was saying.
Yes.
And that his reaction was over the top. It was not acceptable for a public official. Indeed, President Mahama yanked him to the Flagstaff House and cautioned him to be wary of how he responds to public criticism. 2-3 weeks after that, and I can tell you for free also that I and a colleague of mine actually intervened and pleaded that we thought, yes, it was not sightly, but we didn't think that it constituted an offense grave enough to warrant dismissal. So after some consideration, but I'm cautioning you, ensure that you don't do this thing again. I think 3 weeks or so later, he granted an interview to Joy FM. And then he was asked an innocuous question about what he made of the whole Buaha. Then he said, oh, even that comment had made him popular, and the people who didn't know of him had heard of him because of that. That very day he was fired by President Mahama for not expressing and regret over the comment that he made. So that is an administrative measure. I don't think that if you took any court would uphold a claim that he had committed any offense. Like I thought that it was not acceptable behavior. So he dismissed him. So there are those, it was even a harsh reaction to what he said. Also, that there is a president who is committed to enforcing certain standards. And you see,
the conduct of the officers in terms of their interface with the public.
Yes.
They have to be humble because you recognize how arrogance of power can cost you.
Yes.
But
it is not even just the consequence of that. It is the fact that we must acknowledge that we are public, or indeed, we are servants of the people. The trappings of power are just to enable us execute the task. They go to a place and they extend a courtesy to me of another person. It's not because I'm exceptional. It's not because I'm 6 feet tall. It will help me carry out my work better than if it was not in place. So that is all that we are. We are public servants. That is indeed, when they ask you for your occupation on any form that you fill as a minister, the answer there is public servant. And that means that you exercise whatever authority you exercise.
Yes.
In fact, our constitution, the very first sentence is what? Sovereignty. So we are exercising power on their behalf. We must acknowledge them as our bosses, and that is what informs this. Forget about the code if you are rude, but the president says that in times when you are provoked, you must exercise restraint and know how you carry yourself. So let there be no ambiguity.
So I think it has to be very clearly established that this code of conduct launched by the president does not in any way
prejudice
that the
any action
process
exactly
for
it does
the
not
conduct of public consult bill.
It does not.
Which is good.
It does not, because I can assure you, and I think everyone here would agree, that when that bill comes to Parliament for scrutiny and subsequent approval, some of the things in this one cannot find expression because it cannot be upheld. You can't hold it against any scrutiny. It won't stand any test in any law court because it won't constitute because it's not an offense. You understand me? So that is, and those things are important because then it guides. Because there are also people, especially those who are new to government, who don't know. There are some of them who are in the private sector who have certain attitudes and things that the private sector would accept, but those things are not acceptable in government. The larger
it is the effectiveness of the enforcement of the code of conduct, the details of this code of conduct, which is the issue.
But President Mahama'S,
I mean, it's as you indicated, the detail it's clear. It's clear. And it takes a number of boxes. It is the effective implementation of this code to ensure that all government appointees are whipped in line is what the concern is.
So
how are you going to do that?
So yes, so for instance, those ones that are spelled out in law, for instance, it's not even the president will arrest you. However, if you travel 300 times a year, he will fire you or will apply some. That's why even those who fail to declare the assets are facing some sanctions. It's an administrative measure. It is not lawful. I don't think that if you again went to court and tested that it will stand. But people understand that as president, he has the right, he reserves the authority to straighten our path. If the president has a track who fall foul of it, and that's why I give you the he suffered consequences that people thought were harsh compared to the said what do you call it, Victoria Hammer. If he had not earned $1 million in life, he was not going to antagonize someone he perceived to be senior. That in itself cannot constitute an offense. There's a certain clamor after acquiring wealth. Within 24 hours of the breaking of that controversy, she was fired. So this is a president who has a track record. Indeed, this is also a man who has actually put appointees on. And in the last government, really, so the king means business. And in this instance, some of the provisions are such that there's no other way around it than for the president to apply administrative sanctions.
Okay.
And he has indicated that he will do that. And the reason why the code also exists is that if you fall foul, you'll be dealt with. It's very clear.
In fact, that is what I'm going into. You see, this is a 66-page. If you wanted the full details of it, you can get on freenews.com or the presidency's website as well. It's published. You can. It's been uploaded there, so you can download it. But we're going to put portions of it on the screen right now, just for the benefit of our viewers. Council, just quick.
Yeah, it's okay that Ofosu came in. It's fine. The last bit that I need to mention is that you should quickly return to the first term. Yes, he has.
We actually
Okay. You see, he that mentioned the fact that we write your experience date.
That you can make a law out of. But there are consequences for behavior. For instance, again, the size of government. President Akufo-Addo had 126
Yes.
The moment President Mahama promised to do 60, he found favor with the electorate. So there are consequences for not doing some things. The electorate is that yes, whereas it is not unlawful, it is nonetheless unacceptable. There's also that, but I agree entirely that we need to codify those aspects that we can defend on the basis of law, and let it be clear that if you do it, they are signed. Indeed, I have also argued that many of them already exist in our laws, but perhaps it's because they are scattered, it is difficult to keep track of. So in one document, in respect, it clarifies the position for everybody. Right. Well, so what's going to happen is that we will get an